Hello Americans channel. This video is made by free videos from Storyblocks, and these images and video we use just for explanation, and it's free use also.
Girl, 19, gives birth. Doctor calls the police when the father walks in and he recognizes him. Something unexpected occurred as their personal and professional lives started to fall apart. Daisy phoned one morning, her voice urgent. She said, "You won't believe this, Scarlett's taking revenge. The news made my heart race." Scarlett appeared to have been forced to act since the strain had finally pushed her over the line. This turn of events was an unanticipated obstacle in my otherwise perfect plan. Emma would have liked things to remain that way for the remainder of her life, as she had not spoken to the baby's father in a long time. She had no desire to see him ever again. However, she was now expecting his child, and despite the fact that it was insane, she genuinely desired to retain it. Her parents were startled to learn who the father was when she informed them. Why would she desire a child that would always be associated with that awful man? However, they accepted the fact that she would not change her decision and did all in their power to support her. When Emma held her beautiful daughter in her hands, she realized that she needed to do the one thing she had avoided for months. She wished for her child and all other young girls to live in a better world. So she finally told the doctor about the baby's father, and he immediately called the police. Who was the baby's dad? What had he done to Emma? And why did the doctor call the police? Emma waited for the test results while sitting on her bed, her heart pounding in her chest. Sadie, Emma's best friend, was in her room with her and tried to soothe her by holding her shaking hands. "I'm here for you, whatever comes up on that stick," she said to her. Emma had mentioned her possible pregnancy to Sadie earlier that day. Being the wonderful friend that she is, Sadie had put Emma's needs ahead of her own. She knew that she was terrified and she needed her help, so she immediately took her to buy a pregnancy test. Sadie's automobile took them to an out-of-town pharmacy since Emma was afraid of being identified. Sadie walked inside and purchased the test herself because Emma would not get out of the car even at that point. After several hours, they found themselves seated in Emma's chamber, gazing at the little stick in front of them. At last, something began to show up on the test as the seconds passed more slowly than before. The first line appeared and the females looked at it, holding their breath. Emma hoped the outcome would remain this way, indicating that she was not pregnant. However, the appearance of another line would indicate that she was. The second line appeared a few seconds later as well. Emma didn't respond at all at first. When Sadie looked up at her, it was clear that she had noticed the second line, even if she had wondered if she had. When Emma started crying, Sadie tried to comfort her by giving her a hug and assuring her that everything will be well. Sadie stayed at Emma's side while she sobbed uncontrollably. She was aware that she needed to support her pal. Sadie could only imagine how hard it must be for Emma to learn she was pregnant because she was well aware of her previous relationship and the reasons it had ended. Emma urged Sadie to keep this a secret from everyone, especially her parents, as soon as she had somewhat calmed down. Sadie acknowledged this, of course, but she insisted on taking Emma to the doctor. Fortunately, they managed to schedule a meeting for the following morning. Emma feigned illness the following day in order to avoid attending school. She was informed by her parents that she did not appear well, and that it would be prudent to visit a doctor. Emma informed her mother that Sadie would already be coming to get her up when she volunteered to take her. Fortunately, Emma's parents didn't find this strange because the two girls were so close. Emma was left alone at home as they said their daughter farewell with a kiss and left for work. Her mind was swimming with ideas and questions while she waited for Sadie to come get her, but the one that most alarmed her was, what am I going to do with this baby? Shortly after Emma's parents had departed, Sadie showed up and she hurried into the car. After driving to Emma's physician, they waited in the lobby until Dr. Roberts called Emma's name. When he did, Emma's knees trembled as the two girls entered his office together. The girls were headed home again around 30 minutes later. Emma was 10 weeks along in her pregnancy, according to the doctor's confirmation. Fortunately, both Emma and the infant were in perfect health after his examination. Dr. Roberts then gave Emma the exact words she needed to hear. The doctor was aware that Emma was single at the moment and recognized how challenging this circumstance was for her. She didn't need to make any major decisions just yet, he informed her. She could take her time considering everything, and when she had decided, she could schedule another meeting. Was she interested in keeping the baby? Emma was initially adamant that she did not want to retain the child. She wanted to make the most of her life while she was still so young. She had neither a job nor a college degree yet. How could she possibly care for a newborn by herself? More significantly, she had a very excellent reason for ending her relationship with her ex-boyfriend, and she had no intention of ever seeing him again. To move on from the relationship and break up, she had thrown away anything that made her think of him. That was obviously not going to get any better after having their baby. However, she began to see life as a mother as time went on and she became accustomed to being pregnant. It didn't seem so horrible after all. She began to notice the changes in her body and think about the life that was developing inside of her more and more. She was having a harder time keeping this from her parents. Emma felt she could trust Sadie with her life since she was the only one who knew about it. She therefore spoke with Sadie anytime she felt the need to discuss this with someone. She was terrified of her response, but she knew she had to talk to her immediately. Sadie was ecstatic for Emma when she revealed that she was considering becoming pregnant. Emma was glad to know that she would at least have Sadie at her side, even if she acknowledged that it had been a truly tough decision to make given all the circumstances. A few months later, Emma was starting to show and could no longer conceal her pregnancy from her parents. When they initially learned who the baby's father was, they were taken aback and concerned. After what he had done to their daughter, they were still enraged with him. Additionally, they were upset because Emma had allowed him to get away with it all. But now that she was older and capable of making her own choices, she was doing better. They were thrilled for her and fully backed her after learning that she truly wanted to become a mother, and that they would soon become grandparents. But Emma had yet to get in touch with the baby's father, who was unaware that he was even expecting a child. Furthermore, she would like that he never even learned that he was the father of her child. She had finally found peace after doing everything she could to remove him from his life. She was feeling fine and everything else about her pregnancy was going smoothly. She had no serious problems, but she was naturally feeling a little more exhausted and dizzy than normal. She was still content with her choice to retain the child. Indeed, she was eagerly anticipating giving birth. Emma therefore felt prepared as the due date drew nearer. This was what she was planning to do. Even though she didn't have a partner, she knew she wouldn't have to face this alone since she was surrounded by loving and supporting family and friends. Overall, she felt secure, but she must confess that she was a little anxious when her water broke. However, it only made sense because she had never done any of this before. Sadie greeted her parents at the hospital after they hurriedly drove her there. Now it was actually occurring. "You're going to succeed. Additionally, you will be the most amazing mother ever." Before Emma was led to the delivery room, Sadie said this to her. Emma's parents were permitted to enter the room with her, but the baby's father was not. Emma sensed that the baby will arrive soon since the contractions were becoming increasingly uncomfortable. She was fortunate not to have to push for very long. When a gorgeous and healthy baby was born a few hours later, Emma realized that this was the best day of her life to date and embraced her in her arms. In honor of her deceased grandma, she gave her daughter the name Rose. Although it was time to return home, their journey would not finish here. Emma relished each and every second she spent with Rose. She was ecstatic and incredibly pleased to be her mother. Even though she had mostly kept the pregnancy a secret, she was relieved that everything had gone smoothly. However, she also understood that she had to take significant action. She had kept the baby's father and his treatment of her a secret from all of the physicians. She had made the decision to simply go on and attempt to forget about all that had happened, since she felt embarrassed of herself for it all. However, she realized she couldn't just let him get away with it after seeing her daughter's little face. She made an appointment by calling her doctor, who she had seen for her initial prenatal checkup. Despite her extreme nervousness, she knew that this was the appropriate course of action. She owed it to tiny Rose and herself, and to all the other girls who had ever experienced such a terrible predicament. Her hands were shaking when she entered the doctor's office a few days later. It felt a little strange because it was the first time since giving birth that she wasn't in Rose's room. Fortunately, her parents had little trouble keeping an eye on her during her stay. They even urged her to leave. They already had a deep affection for the infant and relished every moment they spent with her. In addition, they were quite proud of Emma for finally disclosing the baby's father to the doctor. Ever since they discovered what he had done to their daughter, they have harbored animosity for him. But Emma's desire to take action had never existed. She acted as if none of it had ever occurred, as if their connection had never been. But now that she had her own child, she decided to do something about it. time has come. Trying to think of the perfect words to begin her narrative, Emma sat on the chair in the doctor's office. She nearly began to wish she had never called in the first place, but the doctor's calm demeanor and gentle gaze gave her the reassurance she needed to know she was secure. "You may take your time, it's all right. Just let me know when you're ready," he told her, and Emma was aware that this was the proper course of action. She inhaled deeply before speaking, revealing all she had been keeping to herself for the last 2 years. She had never really talked to anybody, not even Sadie, about how she felt about Jake and what he had done to her. Even though her parents and a few of her friends were aware of it, she was now sharing all that she had been holding inside for far too long. She completed telling her story after a time. Throughout conversation, the doctor had remained silent, just nodding sometimes and giving her a tissue box when she began to cry. She was scared to look Dr. Roberts in the eyes as they sat there in total stillness. Even though she understood deep down that none of it was her fault, a lingering sense of shame clung to her, and speaking it all out loud felt strangely uncomfortable. She feared the doctor might yell at her or refuse to help entirely, but none of that happened. With a serious expression, he looked at and said, "I need to call the police about this, okay?" And Emma nodded. She knew the police could help her even more, but the thought of having to repeat her entire story to yet another group of strangers was something she wasn't looking forward to. Dr. Roberts called the police and they quickly dispatched a car to his office. An officer arrived to pick up Emma and take her to the station so she could press charges. Fortunately, the officer recognized how serious the situation was and did everything possible to help Emma feel comfortable and supported. However, just as they were about to leave the doctor's office, Emma made a special request. She asked the officer if they could stop by her house so she could pick something up. It was something important that would help her press charges. The officer agreed, of course, though she couldn't help but wonder what exactly Emma needed. Emma returned to the car just as quickly as she had gone inside, carrying with her a quiet determination. As she got back in, she looked at the officer and said she was ready to do what she should have done a long time ago, and ready to make her ex-boyfriend face the consequences of his actions. When they finally arrived at the station, the officer guided Emma to one of the interrogation rooms, where they waited for another officer to join them, and he did shortly after. Emma knew she would have to recount her entire story once more, but this time her feelings were different. Instead of dread, she felt a growing sense of strength and purpose. She wasn't scared or uncertain anymore. There was no room for self-doubt. Instead, she felt determined and confident, fully aware that she was doing the right thing. Most of all, she felt strong. She had faced her fears and overcome them. While she initially believed she was doing it mostly for Rose, she now realized she was truly doing it for herself. After about an hour of recounting her story to the officers, Emma finally finished, and during the process, she revealed something crucial. The item she had picked up from home on the way to the station was a box, a very special one in which she had carefully stored all the proof of what Jake had done. Deep down, a part of her had always known this day would come, which is why she had never thrown the box away, despite how painful it was to see it. When the police officers looked through its contents, their eyes widened in disbelief at the overwhelming evidence she had kept hidden all this time. They could hardly believe what they were seeing. After carefully going through the contents, the officers asked if they could borrow the box to make copies of everything inside. The evidence was incredibly valuable and would undoubtedly strengthen the case and help move forward with pressing charges. Later that night, as Emma sat at home holding Rose in her arms, a wave of happiness and satisfaction washed over her. It had been a tough day, but she was incredibly proud of herself for taking that big step and finally standing up for herself. And thankfully, from that moment on, things were only going to get better. A couple of days later, Jake was summoned to the police station for an interrogation where the officers hit him with a barrage of questions. At first, he denied everything, insisting that he was the real victim and that Emma had twisted the entire story. But fortunately, Emma had anticipated exactly this kind of reaction, and she had made sure to keep solid evidence of it all in that box. As soon as the officers presented the copies of the evidence Emma had provided, Jake went completely silent. He refused to answer any more questions and only spoke to demand a lawyer. It was no surprise. Emma had always known he'd try to make this more difficult than it needed to be. Jake continued to deny every accusation Emma had made, and eventually the case was brought to court. Even there, he maintained that none of it was true and accused Emma of lying. When questioned about the evidence she had provided, he dismissed it repeatedly, claiming it had to be fabricated. In the end, Jake was found guilty and sentenced to a few years in prison, and Emma couldn't have been more relieved. She felt no sympathy for him, not after everything he had put her through. Now, he would be behind bars where he might finally be forced to face the consequences of his actions. Most importantly, he would never be able to hurt another girl the way he had hurt her. Emma had hoped to put everything behind her quietly and privately, but the case quickly gained widespread attention from the media and online communities. Soon, people began recognizing her on the street, and at first, she hated the sudden spotlight. The unwanted attention stirred up old feelings of shame, and she felt herself slipping back into the insecurities she had worked so hard to overcome. Fortunately, everyone who recognized and approached her had only kind words to offer. Emma was overwhelmed by the support she received from complete strangers, all expressing their admiration and encouragement. She even began receiving heartfelt messages from other girls, women, and even men who had gone through similar experiences, telling her that her courage had inspired them to take action in their own lives. When Emma realized the powerful impact her story had on others, she knew she had to continue down that path. She went on to write a book about her experience, pouring her heart into every page, and even founded an organization dedicated to helping women in similar situations, offering them the support, guidance, and hope they desperately needed. You see, Jake had been extremely abusive toward Emma throughout their relationship. She endured it for far too long, longer than anyone close to her thought she should have. But eventually, she found the strength to leave him. Unfortunately, walking away wasn't as easy as she had hoped. When Jake realized she intended to leave him, his behavior grew even worse. He became more aggressive, more controlling, and by the end, Emma was genuinely afraid of him. Thankfully, with the support of her parents and a few close friends, she managed to escape that terrifying situation. After leaving him, she blocked him on every platform she could: his phone number, all his social media accounts, even his email. At first, she thought that would be enough to finally put an end to it. But Jake wasn't ready to let go. He found other ways to contact her, even resorting to calling from other people's phones in a desperate attempt to reach her. However, after a while, the attempts to contact her suddenly stopped. Emma figured he had finally realized that she would never forgive him for what he had done, and that there was no chance of them ever getting back together. She had made up her mind she never wanted to see or speak to him again. After that, Emma was doing great. She took back control of her life and was truly thriving. She spent more time with friends, focused on things that brought her joy, and for a while, her ex was barely a thought in her mind. But then, about 9 months ago, everything changed. She started feeling a bit sick. Looking back on everything now, Emma realized it had taken her far too long to report him to the police. Fear had held her back, fear that he would come after her and take revenge. But once she had Rose, she knew she couldn't stay silent any longer. She had no other choice. She already loved this baby more than anyone or anything in the world, and she would do whatever it took to protect her. And for that exact reason, Emma knew she had to report Jake to the police. As painful as it was to revisit that dark chapter of her life, she owed it to herself and to Rose. Now that it was all finally behind her, she felt relieved, happy, and proud. She had fought for a better future for both herself and her daughter, and she had made it happen. They built a happy life together, and Rose grew up to be a bright, healthy girl. In time, Emma met someone new, and after a few years of dating, they got married. Fortunately, he was the complete opposite of Jake: kind, respectful, and loving. Emma couldn't have been happier.